Greetings and welcome to LA Quill. Today we're diving into the prologue of Arianna's tale. The screams of the dying filled the cool morning air as waves crashed against the coast of the small island with a deafening roar. A boy, only 15, with blonde hair and dark eyes, stabbed the last remaining slave in the abdomen as slowly as he could, and withdrew the knife with the same deliberate movements, letting the poor man bleed to death gradually. As his mother had taught him, the slower a life was drained, the more power could be gathered from a single death. This death will be powerful indeed, he thought, as the man's lifeblood flowed over the sand. With this final slave, there were now over 24 deaths to draw from, and the boy had taken all night to slaughter them. There was plenty of energy available now. The sun was only just rising, making the world appear red, which seemed appropriate enough for the occasion. He looked over at his mother, who was slowly gathering the blood magic to her, spinning it in and around herself as carefully as a woman with a newborn child. But this was no child she coddled now. It was something far darker. She was glowing a sickly red, the telltale color of blood magic, and had a cruel smile on her lips. Her black hair whipped in the wind, and her almost black eyes were closed in complete ecstasy. Her mouth was slightly open, as though caught in the throes of passion. She was seated on an ancient boulder, one that looked as if it had been carved for the sole purpose of being a chair. Perhaps it had, long ago, by one of the mages who had used this island before them. They had picked this island specifically, located in the northern half of the Arian Republic at the mouth of the Hyara River. No one lived here in this desolate place, and no one ever would. Legend had it that it was from this island that the lady and the lord had first created the land of Vorama, which spanned all that was known, east, west, north, and south. That was nonsense, of course. This island had only existed since the time of the Great Rupture, a mere 800 years ago, while Vorama itself had existed much longer. However, the legend, mistaken as it might be, created a reverence for this island, and not a little fear. At the very least, it kept people away while mother and son completed their work. The real reason they had chosen this island was not that it was deserted. Their motives were much darker and hardly as well known as that ridiculous legend. This island had been used for centuries by blood mages, mostly for its privacy and utter desolation. Over time, this had produced an unusual effect. The land itself had acquired an affinity for blood magic. It was almost as if the island loved it. A deep, hidden evil seeped from every blade of grass. Magic born of pain and death was stronger here than almost anywhere else. It was perfect for their purposes. They had needed a seaside location for this to work, preferably in the north of the Republic, and this was what they had found. His mother intended to summon a sea creature of legend, one she could bind to her will. She would have it patrol the waters north of here, preventing any ships from approaching from the Abital Empire, while at the same time restraining it from attacking the coastal villages. The last thing she wanted was for the Yarians to discover what she was about. As long as she kept the creature in the far north, there would be no problem. Republican vessels did not sail further than the Arden River, leaving them untouched. His mother finished collecting the energy from the many deaths and rose, heading toward the open water. There was a slight spring in her step. He knew she was enjoying herself immensely. Pain and death brought her a sick form of pleasure. Sometimes she was a frightening woman, even to her son. He stepped back, away from the water, ever obedient. She had been very clear. He was not to take part in this. He was to sit, watch, and learn. As he settled into the soft grass, he reflected on what she was about to do. He knew she wanted to prevent ships from reaching the Republic, and he knew why. Anyone hearing of her plan would assume that she was protecting it. And in a way, she was. But that wasn't her true objective. There was no love lost between the woman and the Republic. No, her reasons were far different than might be expected. It had taken over 200 years, but the Abital Empire had finally perfected the art of building fully armed, seaworthy battleships, and had trained and tested crews to sail them. For centuries they had cared little about the sea. That changed when Rocken assumed the throne 30 years ago. Now his mother suspected that within the next 2 or 3 years, the Empire would mount a sea assault against the Republic. With their new fleet, they could very well succeed. This she needed to prevent at all costs. She would sacrifice 10 times the number of people, slaves or not, if it meant continuing the war. The Imperial army, once landed on Republican soil, would surely be unstoppable. Their soldiers were strong and numerous, their generals hardened and experienced in the art of war. There was little doubt the invasion would succeed quickly. The Republic would be subjugated within mere months. The Imperial army would then obtain the one thing they sought, the one thing his mother feared most, the Sirius Stone. This crystal was the prize the Imperials wanted, the weapon that would end the war, and the one thing they must not be allowed to possess. The woman at the water's edge, hands raised and glowing red, needed the war to continue. She needed the stalemate, at least until her own plans were ready. She had been scheming since before he was born, though he knew few details. He only knew she intended to rule both Empire and Republic. But she wasn't ready yet. She needed more time. Time the Imperials were stealing from her with their plans of invasion. She had to wield the Sirius Stone as leverage against the Abital Emperor. She hated him with a passion and was determined to destroy him, even if it took her entire life. And so here they were, on the edge of the ocean, preparing to summon and control something once worshipped as a god. It was a suicidal plan, one any sane person would have rejected, but not his mother. And knowing her, with her infernal luck and consummate skill, she would carry it out easily, or at least efficiently. To his 15-year-old eyes, nothing seemed beyond her. He yearned to be more like her, unlike so many young men his age. He absolutely worshipped his mother. She was going to combine earth magic and blood magic. She had never done it before. Few ever had, but she had little choice. Neither blood magic nor elemental magic alone would be sufficient to control the beast. She needed the precision and stability of earth magic, combined with the raw power of blood magic. There was no greater combination, at least to his way of thinking. It would take much from her, leaving her weak and vulnerable. In fact, the blood magic alone would nearly kill her. Nearly. Nothing could truly kill his mother. Of that, he was convinced. There was only one other type of magic that could have been used, one that would have left her refreshed and energized. Unfortunately, it would never answer to her call. Divine magic, a gift from the gods, belonged only to those with the right, either by birth or by devotion. His mother had neither. She was no god's descendant and certainly no priestess. That wasn't likely to change in his lifetime. Divine magic could not be compelled, though she certainly had tried. So she was forced to use the lesser magics at her command. These would be powerful enough to subdue the beast, but only just. He was jolted from his thoughts by a sudden splash and a spray of water across his face. Wiping his eyes, he saw that his mother had succeeded. The beast looked almost like a dragon out of legend, except it had no legs, and the leathery wings on its back were too small and thin for flight, but perfect for cutting through water at great speed. Its mouth bore 4 huge fangs that dripped poison. Its eyes were too close together, and it had no nose or ears that he could see. Its sickly gray skin was covered in razor-like scales. The thing was hideous and terrifying. Its rage was palpable as it fixed them with hate-filled eyes. His mother was already on her knees, exhausted from the effort, but not yet spent. And the worst was not over. Now that she had summoned the creature, she had to bend it to her will, force it to obey her and her alone. He watched her weave her spell expertly, not a single flaw in her work. The magic was steady and strong despite her obvious fatigue. He burned with envy. He could practice until the day he died and never match her power or her finesse. Certainly not her focus when overtired. The sea creature lunged at her, snapping in fury, but was held back again and again by her protective wards and by the spell of coercion wrapping ever tighter around it. The thing howled in frustration, and the boy clapped his hands to his ears in pain. The screech threatened to deafen him. Just when he thought he could bear no more, the sound ceased. The creature, glowing as red as his mother, stared at them with unrelenting hatred. He knew that if it could break free of her spell, it would kill them both, slowly and painfully. He shivered. Toying with something once godlike was dangerous beyond reason. But of course his mother was one of the most powerful mages alive, and there was little she could not do, especially since blood magic could go undetected except by another blood mage. She could work high-level spells without fear of discovery. Still, he wished to be far from here, and he knew that once his task was complete, he would never again linger in the northern waters, no matter the temptation. His mother finished setting the spells, binding the creature to her command. It graced them with one final burning look of hatred, then slipped beneath the waves. The water stilled unnaturally in its wake, and the boy sagged with relief. His mother collapsed, entirely spent. He hurried to her side, ready to help her in any way he could. That was why she had brought him. It would take days for her to recover enough to open a portal to leave this place. That was fine. They had supplies for a week. Helping her to the shelter he had erected the night before, he gave the silent waves one last look. He wondered briefly how it would all end, if it ever did. And if it did, who would be left standing? And that's our tale from L.A. Quill today. If you enjoyed this chapter, let me know your favorite moments in the comments below. Until next time, may your stories always be magical.